Hank, with his disheveled silver hair and the tired expression of someone who had lived through many winters, was bent over the shopping cart, his trembling hands counting each coin with meticulous attention. The sound of the coins echoed slightly as he arranged them into small piles on the cashier's counter, trying to make the money stretch for the basic necessities at home. Next to him were some essentials: bread, rice, and a can of beans. The meat, initially placed in the cart with a glimmer of hope, now seemed like an unattainable luxury. With a deep breath, he looked at the young cashier, who watched with a mix of impatience and sympathy. "I'm sorry, miss," said Hank, his voice hoarse with age. "I'll need to take the meat out. It won't be enough today." He attempted a smile, but his eyes revealed the sadness of a man who wished to offer more to his son. The cashier, a young woman with her hair tied back in a tight bun, nodded understandingly and removed the meat pack from the scanner, setting it aside. "Don't worry, sir. We have days like these," she replied kindly, trying to offer some comfort to the old man. Hank nodded, pocketing the remaining coins into his worn coat, thinking of Travis, his son, who was waiting at home. He remembered the days when, as a driver, he never lacked work or money, but now, retired, every day was a challenge to make the pension stretch a little further. "Thank you, dear," he finally said, pushing the cart with less weight than when he entered, but with a heavy heart for not being able to bring everything he needed. Walking out of the supermarket, Hank felt the cold afternoon breeze against his face, mixing with thoughts of how he would explain the situation to Travis. He knew disappointment was inevitable. The meat was one of the few luxuries that allowed them to vary their monotonous dietary routine. As he headed home, each step felt heavy, both from physical fatigue and the weight of circumstances. Upon arriving home, Hank placed the bags on the kitchen counter with a weary sigh and began preparing dinner with the few ingredients he had managed to buy: rice and some vegetables. As the water began to boil, he tried to disguise the absence of meat, hoping Travis would not notice. Travis entered the kitchen and frowned upon seeing what was being prepared. "This again? Dad, wasn't there something better at the supermarket?" "Something with meat," he rolled his eyes, his voice loaded with frustration and a touch of disdain. Hank, maintaining his composure despite the growing pressure, turned to face his son. "Travis, you know the pension doesn't stretch as far as we'd like. Besides, the medicines aren't getting any cheaper," he explained, his voice low but firm. "I do the best I can with what we have." Travis huffed, clearly annoyed. "It's always the same excuse. Dad, you should have planned better. You knew things would get tight in your retirement." The accusation was unfair, and Hank felt a twinge of pain in his heart. "I didn't choose to get sick, son, and I didn't expect things to be this tough," Hank replied, sadness permeating his words. He turned back to the stove, stirring the rice, trying to hide the hurt that Travis's words had caused. The tension between them grew, a reflection of the hardships and disappointments that had accumulated over the years, leaving the atmosphere charged. As the food slowly cooked, Travis grappled with the weight of a life marked by loss and poverty. His mother, Natalie, had died in childbirth, leaving him in the care of Hank since his youth. Travis had found in work a way to escape the life that so embarrassed him. Nowadays, he became a salesman at a luxury boutique in an upscale shopping center, where he was surrounded by what he believed to be the antidote to his situation: wealth and ostentation. The job paid him enough to significantly contribute to household expenses, but Travis chose another path. He spent every penny he earned on branded clothes, cutting-edge sneakers, and expensive perfumes, seeking the approval and admiration of a social circle that valued appearances above all else. "Don't you think you should save some of your salary to help out at home?" Hank would occasionally ask, trying to instigate a sense of responsibility in Travis. "The bills won't pay themselves." Travis, always defensive, responded irritably, "I work hard. Dad, I deserve to enjoy my money. Why should I sacrifice my pleasures to cover the expenses you can't pay?" These arguments were frequent and intense, exacerbating the already palpable tension between them. Hank, burdened with guilt for not being able to provide more, and Travis, struggling against the stigma of poverty that made him feel less than others, felt the weight of their financial reality resting entirely on his shoulders. Despite the difficulties, Hank still tried to preserve some sense of peace in the home they shared. On a gray afternoon, the tension between Hank and Travis reached a critical point. Travis, with a suitcase already packed at his side, faced his father with cold determination. "I'm leaving, Dad," he declared, his voice loaded with a mix of relief and bitterness. "Don't try to find me." Hank, surprised and alarmed by the sudden decision, tried to approach the situation calmly. "Where are you going, Travis?" "Can you tell me what happened?" he asked, hoping there was still room for dialogue. But Travis shook his head, his expression hard, leaving no room for arguments. "It's none of your business. I've got an opportunity, something I really deserve, not like this miserable life here." The words came out loaded with scorn as he picked up his suitcase. Hank, with a heavy heart, insisted, his voice trembling. "Son, whatever this opportunity is, let's talk about it. It doesn't have to be this way." "No, Dad," Travis interrupted, raising his voice. "I'm tired of living in poverty, of depending on a pension that barely sustains us. It's time for me to live the life I've always wanted, far from here." Without waiting for a response, Travis crossed the front door, leaving Hank alone, the door slamming hard behind him. Hank remained motionless, staring at the closed door. The house suddenly seemed much larger and quieter, and with a heavy heart, he retreated, feeling a mix of loss and fear for his son's uncertain future. A few weeks before his abrupt decision to leave the house, Travis had an encounter that would change the course of his life. While working at the luxury store in the mall, an elegant lady with an imposing posture and discerning eyes entered, immediately drawing his attention. Her name was Irene, and she exuded an aura of sophistication and financial security. Initially, Travis approached her with his usual professionalism, but his curiosity was piqued by the way Irene moved and spoke. Each gesture and word reflected her comfortable position in life. With a charming smile and genuine attention, Travis made sure to serve her, guiding her through the store's most exclusive collections. "You have excellent taste," commented Irene, clearly pleased with Travis's recommendations. "Thank you, ma'am." "It's always a pleasure to help someone who appreciates quality," replied Travis, his charm fully on display. As they conversed, Travis learned that Irene was a widow and the owner of a series of successful businesses. She mentioned almost casually how loneliness sometimes weighed on her, despite her successful and fulfilled life. Seizing an opportunity, Travis began to devote a little more attention to her, anticipating her visits to the store and always ensuring exclusive service. "Do you always come here alone?" Travis asked during one of their encounters while helping Irene choose a perfume. "Lately, yes. Since I became a widow, I've kept my circle quite restricted," she revealed, a hint of sadness in her voice. Travis nodded understandingly, fixing in his mind every detail that Irene shared, knowing that each piece of information could be the key to his plan. As the relationship between Travis and Irene deepened, he began to see not just a friendship but an opportunity for change in his life. He then started to flirt with her, always very attentive and charming, knowing exactly how to take advantage of her emotional vulnerability. In one of their more intimate conversations, while walking through the mall during Travis's break, he decided to take a step forward in his plan. "You know," Irene began, looking into her eyes with a thoughtful expression, "it's rare to find someone with whom I feel so comfortable sharing my life." He paused, gauging the impact of his words. Irene smiled, touched. "You are very special to me too, Travis. I feel like I've known you for years." Encouraged, Travis continued, carefully weaving his web of lies. "My life hasn't been easy, you know. I lost my parents very young, and they left a considerable inheritance, but it was placed under the management of a guardian until I turned 18. He sighed, projecting the image of someone accustomed to dealing with significant financial responsibilities. "That must have been very hard for you," Irene replied, clearly sympathizing with the fabricated story. "Yes, it was, but I learned a lot about the value of money and how to manage wealth from an early age," said Travis, casting a look at Irene that mixed false vulnerability with confidence. "Now that I'm independent, I try to make the best use possible of what my parents left me." By building this narrative, Travis created the illusion of having a solid financial base, planting the seed that he was a desirable and self-sufficient match. His goal was clear: to solidify his place in Irene's life, using the empathy and fascination she felt for him to eventually execute his scam. Weeks turned into months, and the relationship between Travis and Irene blossomed, nurtured by deep conversations and time shared at social events and private meetings. Irene, increasingly captivated by Travis's charisma and apparent sincerity, began to see him as a true life companion. The trust she placed in him grew daily, reinforced by the stories skillfully constructed by Travis about his life and aspirations. One day, while enjoying an intimate dinner at one of the city's most elegant restaurants, Irene, looking into Travis's eyes with a mix of affection and decisiveness, made an offer that would mark the next chapter of their lives. "Travis, I've been thinking," began Irene, her voice soft but firm. "You've become such an important part of my life. I would like us to be closer in every sense." Travis, keeping his expression carefully controlled, responded, "Irene, you know I feel the same. Being close to you is all I want." Then she continued, "I'd like to offer you something more concrete. I have an apartment that's currently vacant. It's a beautiful place, and I think you would like to live there. Moreover, I'd like you to consider a position in my company. Your insights on finance and management could be very valuable to us." Travis pretended to hesitate, as if pondering the offer deeply, before responding with a shy smile. "That would mean a lot to me. I accept with gratitude and promise to do my best." From that moment, the relationship took a new direction, with Travis moving into the luxurious apartment Irene had offered him and taking a strategic role in her company. This transition was the catalyst for Travis to finally decide to leave Hank's house. His decision to leave was not only driven by the promise of a more comfortable and luxurious life, but also by the desire to escape a past he perceived as limited and suffocating. With the romance with Irene well established and the material benefits secured, Travis felt it was time to cut the last ties with the life he so wanted to leave behind. As for Hank, he found himself enveloped in deep melancholy. The house, once filled with the sounds of his son's presence, now echoed with an oppressive silence that seemed to reverberate through the empty hallways. Sitting at the dining table where they once shared meals, Hank reflected on years of sacrifice and unconditional love, questioning where he might have gone wrong. On a particularly lonely afternoon, while Hank was slowly going through bills and correspondence, his trembling hands found a letter sealed with an elegant crest. A mix of curiosity and mild anxiety took hold of him as he opened the envelope. Inside was a letter from a lawyer representing the estate of a distant uncle of his mother, a man he barely knew and who, according to the letter, had become extremely prosperous through shrewd investments. The text was formally written but conveyed a surprising piece of news. Due to the absence of direct heirs and your close kinship, we respectfully inform you that Mr. Hank Romero has been named the sole beneficiary of the assets and estate of your uncle Charles Romero. We are ready to proceed with the inheritance transfer as soon as possible. Hank read the letter several times, each reading bringing a mix of shock and disbelief. He murmured to himself, "This can't be true. How is this possible?" The loneliness and sadness that marked his days after Travis's departure gave way to a flicker of hope and possibility. With the letter still in hand, Hank walked to the window, looking at the cloudy sky outside. Maybe this changes everything, he thought aloud, allowing himself for the first time in many years to dream of a different future, a future where he could do more for himself and others. With his heart quickened by the hope of a new beginning, Hank walked to the phone, eager to share the news with his son, hoping that it might somehow mend the chasm that had formed between them. However, as he dialed the numbers, Travis's harsh and resentful words echoed in his mind, "I'm tired of living in poverty. Why should I sacrifice my pleasures?" The memory of those words cut deeply into Hank, causing him to hesitate. His finger hovered over the last digit, and a whirlwind of emotions overwhelmed him. Would he care about me if it weren't for the money? Hank murmured to himself, his voice choked with doubt and pain. The silence of the house seemed to await his decision, a mute testimony to the loneliness that enveloped him. After a long moment of reflection, Hank slowly lowered the phone, his decision made. No, it shouldn't be like this. He chose his path, he concluded, feeling a mix of liberation and regret. Resolute, Hank decided to keep the news of the inheritance to himself, at least for now, recognizing that revealing it might attract Travis back for the wrong reasons, fueled only by interest and not genuine remorse or a desire for reconciliation. With a deep sigh, Hank put away the phone and returned to look at the letter, now with a sense of renewed responsibility. I will do something good with this, he promised himself, thinking about how he could use the inheritance to make a difference. Meanwhile, Travis and Irene were diving deeper into their romance. Their evenings together were filled with candlelit dinners and long walks through the lush gardens of Irene's residence, where intimate conversations and laughter mingled with the soft breeze of the night. Irene, increasingly enchanted by Travis's charisma and attention, seemed completely oblivious to his true intentions. Realizing how deeply Irene was involved, Travis felt his confidence grow with each gesture of affection and every word of admiration she dedicated to him. In one such moment, while sharing an expensive wine in front of the fireplace, Irene turned to Travis with a look of admiration. "You have brought so much joy to my life, Travis." "I don't know how to thank you for all this," she said, her voice soft and filled with emotion. Travis smiled gently, holding her hand. "Irene, being with you is everything I've ever wanted. You make me feel as if I finally found my place in the world," he replied, weaving another layer into the web of illusion he was creating. With each carefully chosen word and calculated gesture, Travis solidified his role as the ideal partner in Irene's life. Internally, he celebrated every step that brought her closer to him, seeing this as confirmation that his plan was working perfectly. His skill in manipulating emotions was at its peak, and he knew that with each passing day, Irene's trust in him grew deeper, only encouraging him to continue with his dangerous game. As the romance between Travis and Irene solidified, Travis began to explore even more the advantages of his new lifestyle. Over the months, he had become a constant figure beside Irene, both in social events and in business decisions. The trust Irene placed in him seemed unshakable, a circumstance Travis did not hesitate to exploit. On a quiet afternoon, while reviewing some company accounts in Irene's office, Travis casually suggested the purchase of expensive equipment, justifying that it was essential for business expansion. "Irene, to really take our company to the next level, we need to invest in this new equipment. It's a bit pricey, but absolutely necessary," he explained, manipulating the truth to suit his plans. Irene, fully trusting his judgment, nodded and handed him the company credit card. "If you think this is best for our company, I trust you," she said, unsuspecting of the hidden intentions. Simultaneously, Travis used his growing influence to position himself in a more powerful role within the company. "Irene, with my experience and vision, I believe I could manage our new division. It would be an opportunity for me to contribute even more," he proposed during a dinner where wine helped to soften his words. Confident in Travis's capability and blinded by love, Irene agreed without hesitation. "Of course, Travis, your initiative is exactly what our company needs. However, Travis was not limiting himself to merely financial and professional abuse of Irene's trust. He also began a clandestine relationship with a mistress using Irene's card to which he had free access. He financed luxurious getaways and expensive gifts for his new passion. He purchased costly jewelry, booked stays at exclusive hotels, and enjoyed dinners at trendy restaurants, all under the pretext of business. When questioned by Irene, he deftly deflected, knowing that the days passed and Travis became increasingly intoxicated with the sensation of power and control over his situation. He moved with arrogant confidence, savoring each moment of his skillfully orchestrated deceit. Irene, in turn, remained completely in love and increasingly dependent on Travis's presence and decisions, genuinely believing in the integrity and love he professed. On a quiet night, while both relaxed on the couch in Irene's spacious living room with soft music in the background, she turned to him, her eyes shining with admiration and affection. "Travis, I really don't know what I would do without you. You have brought so much light and direction to my life," she confessed, her voice soft and full of emotion. Travis, maintaining his perfect role, smiled softly and held her hand. "Irene, being by your side is all I've ever wanted. You don't need to worry about anything as long as I'm here," he replied, hiding the coldness of his true intentions under the guise of a devoted companion. Behind this facade, Travis delighted in knowing that he was successfully manipulating the situation in his favor. He observed how Irene blindly trusted his words and actions, disregarding any warning signs that might arise. For him, each successful day in his charade only confirmed his ability to play the game of deceit. Irene, wrapped in her love and neediness, depended emotionally and financially on Travis, seeing him as her anchor and guide. She was completely oblivious to the manipulations and the true nature of Travis's intentions. Each step was carefully planned, ensuring that his scheme continued without suspicion, while he reaped the benefits of his role as the perfect partner. However, while Travis continued his charade, not fully aware of all the watchful eyes on him, there were those around Irene who maintained careful vigilance. Carl, the longtime advisor and loyal friend of Irene's late husband, was one such silent guardian. With years of loyalty to the family and a sharp instinct for business, Carl always had reservations about Travis's rapid rise in Irene's life and in the company. One day, while reviewing the company's financial reports, Carl noticed concerning discrepancies in spending that coincided with Travis's arrival and integration into the company. With growing suspicion, he decided to bring his concerns directly to Irene, hoping that his perspective would be considered given his long and trusted history with the family. Carl knocked gently on the door of Irene's office, and upon being invited in, found her sitting pensively, looking out the window. "Irene, may I have a moment? There's something important we need to discuss about the company's recent expenditures," began Carl, his voice laden with concern. Irene looked at him with a mix of surprise and anxiety. "Of course, Carl, what did you find?" With a grave look, Carl handed her the documents. "There are several expenses that are not aligned with our usual budgets, and many of them seem to be associated with decisions made by Travis. These are significant expenditures that were not previously discussed with me or approved in our planning meetings," he explained, pointing out the figures that highlighted the irregularity. After Carl presented his concerns in detail, Irene pondered for a moment before responding, her expression reflecting a mix of apprehension and confidence. "Carl, I understand your concerns and appreciate your vigilance," she began, trying to maintain a balanced voice. "But I truly believe that Travis is acting in the best interest of the company. He explained to me that these expenditures are essential for the new strategies we are implementing." Carl, noting the firmness in Irene's voice, felt a twinge of growing concern. He realized that the affection Irene harbored for Travis was influencing her judgment. "Irene, innovation and expansion are crucial, but we need to maintain a rigorous approval process for all significant expenditures. It's a standard governance practice that has helped us keep the company secure for all these years," he insisted, hoping that his emphasis on prudence might persuade her. Irene smiled slightly, attempting to dissipate the tension. "Carl, I value and trust your experience and dedication," she said, seeking to be conciliatory, "but I ask that you trust me as well. Travis has brought a new perspective that could be very beneficial for us. Let's see how things evolve. And I promise that if any problems arise, we will intervene." Carl, still visibly worried, nodded his head, albeit reluctantly. He understood that as much as he argued, the final decision rested with Irene, and her deep affection for Travis created a difficult barrier to overcome. "I'll always be here to help and protect the company's interests, Irene. Please just keep it in mind." In the days following the conversation with Irene, Carl, driven by a sense of duty to the company and genuine concern for the well-being of his friend, intensified his investigations into Travis. Utilizing reliable contacts and financial monitoring tools, he meticulously collected evidence of Travis's extravagant spending. Even more alarming, Carl managed to capture clear images of Travis entering a luxury motel accompanied by a woman who was definitely not Irene, with a deep sorrow in his heart. Carl organized the evidence, detailed receipts, and the compromising photographs into a dossier that left no room for doubt about Travis's activities. He knew that the impact of this revelation would be devastating for Irene, but also understood that she needed to be aware of the truth. One quiet morning, Carl requested an urgent meeting with Irene in her office. As she entered, he noticed the expression of concern on her face. "Irene, I'm sorry to have to bring this to your attention, but as your friend and advisor, I could not conceal this information from you," he began, his voice laden with seriousness. Irene, sensing the gravity of the moment, nodded. "What happened?" Carl, with care and respect, presented the dossier to Irene. She flipped through the documents, and upon seeing the photos, her face paled, a mix of shock and pain crossing her eyes. "It can't be," she murmured, her voice almost a whisper. Carl offered silent support, allowing Irene to absorb the information. After a few moments, she looked up, her eyes now brimming with tears, but a spark of determination beginning to form. "I need to confront Travis about this. I can't let him continue to deceive me," she said, her decision strengthening her voice despite the clear emotion. "I'll be here for whatever you need," Carl affirmed, offering her both his professional support and his personal loyalty and protection. Irene, still shaken but now armed with the truth, prepared herself to confront Travis, determined to seek explanations and, if necessary, take steps to protect her life and her interests. The day after the devastating discovery, Travis was enthusiastically preparing for a special dinner in his apartment. He had carefully chosen the menu and arranged the table with elegance, anticipating a romantic evening with Irene. His mood was uplifted, expecting to reaffirm his place in her heart with gestures of love and attention. When the doorbell rang, Travis opened the door with a radiant smile, finding Irene dressed charmingly, a gentle smile on her lips disguising the storms within her. He led her to the table, unaware of the emotional turmoil she carried. As they sat down, the atmosphere was deceptively calm, with candles lit and soft music in the background. Travis began to talk about his plans and dreams, completely oblivious to the precipice before him. However, Irene's expression changed drastically as soon as the first course was served. Her smile vanished, replaced by a serious and determined demeanor. "Travis," she began, her voice firm and clear, cutting through the silence, "you are very clever, I must admit, but I think it's time for you to pack your bags." Travis, confused and surprised, furrowed his brow, trying to understand the sudden change in her demeanor. "Irene, what are you saying? Is everything okay?" Without responding directly, Irene pulled out the photographs and receipts that Carl had collected. She placed them on the table, each image and number revealing the truth of his actions. "Here's the reason," said Irene, pointing to the evidence. "You not only betrayed me emotionally and financially, but you also made a fool of me." Travis looked at the evidence, panic setting in as the reality of his choices hit him full force. He tried to formulate an explanation, and excuse anything that could mitigate the situation, but the words failed to come out. Realizing there was no room for argument, Travis slowly stood up, his expression a mix of shock and resignation. He went upstairs to his bedroom and began packing his things hurriedly, each movement a reflection of the defeat and despair he felt. As he packed, the gravity of his mistake and the imminent loss of everything Irene had provided weighed heavily on him. After finishing, he passed by Irene, who watched with an expression of sadness mixed with relief for having discovered the truth before it was too late. Without looking back, Travis left the apartment, his future uncertain and the past, once filled with false promises, now just a painful reminder of his choices. Disoriented and with few options, Travis headed to the only security he had left, his father Hank's house. The journey was permeated with a mix of feelings, where resentment and the need for refuge fought for space. As he approached the neighborhood where he grew up, memories of his childhood and simpler times with his father emerged, but were quickly stifled by his current situation of desperation and disappointment. When he turned the corner, expecting to see the familiar outline of the old house, Travis was greeted by a sight that caused him immediate shock. Where his childhood home once stood, there was now only an empty lot, with mounds of rubble and earth churned up by heavy machinery. There was no sign of the old residence, just the brutal marks of demolition. Confused and incredulous, Travis brusquely parked the car beside the street, his eyes scanning the area for some explanation. What was the old man thinking? He murmured to himself, frustration and fear coloring his words, not understanding the reasons behind the demolition. In his mind, Travis began to construct a narrative of abandonment and disdain, imagining that his father might have decided to erase all memories of their life together. Walking across the lot, his steps kicked up dust from the newly undone foundations, each particle seeming to symbolize the disintegration of his own life. Distressed and still trying to process the scene before his eyes, Travis felt a mix of anger and helplessness. Disconcerted by the sight of the lot where his childhood home once stood, Travis hurried to the neighbor's house, knocking on the door with palpable urgency. The door was answered by Mr. Montoya, an older man who had known Travis's family since he was a child. "Travis, what happened? You look disturbed," observed Mr. Montoya, his expression mixing concern and surprise. "Mr. Montoya, do you know where my father is? I got here and found everything all destroyed." "Where is he?" asked Travis, his voice laden with anxiety and confusion. Mr. Montoya sighed, gesturing for Travis to come in. "Yes, I heard Hank won a large inheritance recently. It seems he decided to invest in something new. He mentioned something about starting a business, but he didn't go into details with me the last time we spoke. He said he was staying at a hotel downtown while things were getting organized." Travis, absorbing the information, felt a mix of relief to know his father was okay and growing curiosity about the inheritance that had apparently transformed Hank's life. "Do you know which hotel he's at?" he inquired, already reaching for his cell phone to start the search. "I'm not sure, Travis, but it's one of the bigger ones. It shouldn't be hard to find." "Hank always liked places that offer a good view of the city," Mr. Montoya replied, trying to help with an encouraging smile. Quickly thanking him, Travis left and began his search for hotels in the downtown area. After a few calls and a quick online search, he managed to identify the hotel where Hank might be. Without wasting time, he drove there, his mind full of questions and a faint hope of reconciliation, or at least understanding the recent changes in his father's life. When Travis arrived at the luxurious hotel in the city center, his heartbeat raced with a mix of nervousness and a deep desire for reconciliation. He went up to the reception, asked for Hank's room, and after a brief wait was guided to the suite where his father was staying. Taking a deep breath, he knocked on the door. Hank opened the door, surprised to see his son there. Travis, his expression laden with humility and remorse. "I need help," began Travis, avoiding his father's gaze. "Irene left me, and I've realized a lot of things. I'm truly sorry for everything." Hank, still in shock at the sudden appearance of his son but maintaining a cautious demeanor, invited Travis to come in. They sat down, and Hank looked intently at Travis, searching for sincerity in his words. "Travis, do you really want to be part of my life again? Or are you here because you heard about the inheritance?" Hank's voice was firm, needing to understand his son's true intentions. Travis, sensing the distrust from his father, responded with an honesty he hadn't shown in years. "Dad, I know I've made many mistakes. Life has taught me a hard lesson, and I've lost everything. I'm not here for the money. I really want to change and start over. I need your support to become a better person," he said, his voice choked with emotion. Hank, visibly moved by Travis's sincerity, decided to open a door to his son's redemption. Despite still harboring some natural distrust after so many disappointments, he knew that providing Travis with structure and responsibility would be essential for his personal growth and redemption. "We need to establish some clear rules," Travis began. "I'm willing to give you another chance, but it's crucial that you truly commit to change and contribute." Relieved and motivated by the opportunity, Travis nodded vigorously. "I understand, Dad. I'm ready to do whatever it takes. I really want to prove that I can be better." Hank then explained the new project he was working on, which included developing several plots for the construction of houses aimed at generating passive income through rentals. "I'll need someone trustworthy to help me manage this project. You'll start with basic responsibilities, and as you demonstrate your commitment and skills, we can increase your involvement." Furthermore, Hank shared his vision of opening an orphanage for homeless children, a dream that had taken shape with the inheritance received. "This is a very special project for me, Travis. It goes beyond profit. It's about giving back to the community and helping those in need. I hope you can get involved and find some purpose in it too." Hearing his father's plans, Travis felt a new hope blossom within him. The possibility of doing something meaningful that could positively impact the lives of others gave him new impetus. "I'll do my best, Dad." Despite the second chance given by his father and the opportunities for real change, Travis began to devise a hidden plan, thinking about how he could benefit even more from the situation without necessarily following the path of righteousness. With a calculating strategy, Travis decided that the best way to secure his position and eventual control over the ventures would be to gain Hank's absolute trust. He began to behave in an exemplary manner, showing himself to be extremely attentive and concerned about his father's well-being. "Dad, I really appreciate everything you're doing for me. I want you to know that I'm here for whatever you need, as your son and as someone who truly cares about you and our project," said Travis, expressing a dedication that seemed sincere. Hank, observing the apparent transformation of his son, felt increasingly comfortable and proud of Travis's evolution. He began to believe that his son's change was genuine, attributing the improvements to the responsibility and love that Travis demonstrated. "I'm really happy, Travis. Seeing you like this, committed and careful, is everything a father could wish for. I feel I can trust you with more and more responsibilities," shared Hank, his voice laden with hope and relief. This development brought a renewed closeness between them, with Hank gradually passing more duties and decisions to Travis, believing he was cultivating a capable successor and rebuilding the broken relationship with his son. Travis, for his part, skillfully navigated between his genuine duties and his hidden intentions, maintaining a facade of loyalty and love while planning his next moves. Over the next 2 years, the relationship between Hank and Travis seemed to flourish as they worked together on the family enterprises. Hank, with great pride and a sense of mission accomplished, finally inaugurated the orphanage he had planned with so much care. It was a project that brought him a lot of joy, a way to give back to the community and help children who faced difficulties in life. While Hank dedicated much of his time and resources to the orphanage, Travis found an opportunity to expand his role in the family business. Taking advantage of his father's growing trust and his own strategic position, he began to take on more responsibilities, managing both the rental properties and other financial aspects of the ventures. "Dad, don't worry so much about the administrative details. You should focus on the orphanage, which is your real dream. Leave the rest to me. I'll make sure everything runs smoothly." Travis often insisted, persuading Hank to delegate even more. Hank, increasingly dependent on the supposed goodwill and abilities of Travis, felt comfortable and even relieved to be able to count on his son. "Travis, I don't know what I would do without you. It's a relief to know I can trust the business to focus on the orphanage. You've shown so much maturity and commitment," he expressed during moments of conversation filled with gratitude and admiration. With this increasing delegation of power, Travis skillfully deepened his control over the resources and business decisions, positioning himself more and more centrally in the management of the family assets. His external behavior continued to be exemplary, but internally he calculated each move to ensure that his power and influence only grew, solidifying his position before eventually revealing his true intentions. As Travis became more entrenched in the family business, an alarming discovery came to light during a routine review. Hank's accountant, Mr. Allen, a meticulous man dedicated to the financial integrity of the company, noticed significant discrepancies in the account counts. Concerned, he scheduled an urgent meeting with Hank to discuss his findings. "Hank, we need to talk about some serious issues I've discovered in the financial records," began Mr. Allen, presenting a folder full of documents and charts. "There's a substantial diversion of funds that compromises our liquidity and also puts us in a complicated situation with the IRS." Hank, feeling the weight of the accountant's words, rubbed his forehead in confusion and worry. "How did this happen? And where exactly are these diversions coming from?" he asked, trying to understand the gravity of the situation. Mr. Allen, having already done a preliminary analysis, explained that the diversions seemed to be linked to transactions and contracts managed directly by Travis. "There's a series of investments and expenses that were not previously discussed or approved by you or the board." Shaken by the possibility of Travis being involved, Hank asked the accountant to investigate further. After a week of detailed investigations, the results were unequivocal and disheartening. Travis had indeed manipulated the company's resources for his own benefit, engaging in activities that diverted significant funds and jeopardized the financial health of the company. Confronted with the evidence, Hank felt a mix of betrayal and disillusionment. "I trusted him. I gave him every opportunity to redeem himself and be part of something bigger. How could he do this?" lamented Hank to Mr. Allen. "I'm sorry, Hank, I know this is hard, but we need to act quickly to correct these issues and avoid more complications with the tax authorities," advised Mr. Allen, already preparing the necessary measures to try to remedy the situation created by Travis. After the devastating revelation by Mr. Allen about the financial diversions, Hank was determined to take drastic measures to protect both the integrity of his company and his own freedom. The possibility of facing legal consequences for actions he did not commit drove him to act quickly and without hesitation. "I cannot allow this to continue, nor can I afford to be complacent. Travis needs to be held accountable," said Hank with a firm resolution in his voice as he spoke with Mr. Allen. "Let's gather all the necessary evidence to show who is truly responsible for these diversions." Hank and Mr. Allen worked tirelessly, compiling financial records, emails, contracts, and any other documentation that Travis had manipulated. They traced the suspicious transactions back to their source, connecting them directly to Travis's actions. Each discovery was a stab in Hank's heart, but he knew facing the truth was essential for justice and the correction of errors. With the evidence in hand, Hank made the difficult decision to report his own son to the authorities. "It's the right thing to do," affirmed Hank to Mr. Allen, though his heart was heavy with the decision. Responsibility and integrity must come above family ties. In this case, when the authorities were notified, they acted quickly. Travis was confronted with the evidence of his mismanagement and fraud. Unable to deny the overwhelming evidence presented against him, Travis was detained and taken into police custody. Hank's actions, though painful as a father, demonstrated his determination to uphold ethics and accountability within his company and saved him from a possible unjust conviction. In the anguishing moment when Travis was detained by the police, he turned to Hank with a look of despair and incredulity. "How could you do this, Dad? How could you let your own son be arrested?" he shouted, his voice choked with emotion and panic at facing the real consequences of his actions. Hank, standing there, watched the scene with deep pain marking his features and replied with a firm voice, though it trembled under the emotional weight of the moment. "Travis, I did everything I could to give you a second chance to help you find the right path. When you came back, I truly believed you had changed, that we were starting a new chapter." Hank paused, struggling to maintain his composure as he continued. "But your actions proved otherwise. You not only betrayed me, but you also put at risk everything we worked so hard for. I tolerated your irresponsibility and dishonesty for too long, always hoping you would redeem yourself." He moved closer to Travis, his expression serious, his eyes filled with profound sadness. "My heart is broken to have to do this, but I cannot overlook your crimes, son. It's time for you to face the consequences of your actions. This is about justice, about doing what's right for me and for everyone affected by your choices." Travis, hearing his father's words, felt the weight of each syllable fall on him like lead. The handcuffs on his wrists seemed to tighten with each truth Hank pronounced as he was led away by the police. Travis carried both the weight of legal consequences and the weight of his father's disappointment, a burden perhaps even harder to bear. In his cell, Travis was forced to confront the silence and isolation he so feared. The first nights were the hardest, spent in vigil under the dim light coming from the corridor, each sound and movement amplifying his anxiety and remorse. As days turned into weeks, Travis began to reflect deeply on his life. Sitting in the corner of his concrete cell, with nothing but time to confront his thoughts, he gradually dismantled the layers of justifications and illusions he had built over the years. He thought about his father, Hank, who had tried to give him everything, and how he had responded with disappointment and betrayal. "I really messed everything up," Travis murmured to himself, his voice echoing slightly against the bare walls. "I had chances that many never get, and what did I do with them? Nothing but lies and deceit." He reflected on the people who had passed through his life, all those who had extended a hand to help him, and how he had used those opportunities only for his personal gain. "They wanted to help me, and I only thought of myself," he admitted in a whisper, the weight of the truth pressing on his heart. This introspection was painful but necessary. For the first time, Travis truly understood the impact of his actions, both in legal terms and the emotional damage he had caused to those around him. The reality of his current situation, confined in a prison cell, served as a brutal mirror of his own failure to build something truly valuable or lasting in his life. He began to realize that the true value in life comes from relationships built on trust and mutual respect, which he had so negligently discarded. During the long months in prison, Travis found an unexpected companion who would deeply impact his perspective on life. His cellmate was an older man named Gilbert, who had a graying beard and tired eyes that told stories of a simpler time before his life took twisted turns. Eventually, Gilbert opened up to Travis. "You know, Travis, I had big dreams when I was younger, simple dreams, really. I wanted a family, kids to teach everything I know," he began, his voice choked with nostalgia and regret. Travis, playing his cards right, paid attention, feeling the sincerity in the man's words. Gilbert continued, "I achieved part of that dream. I had children, 2 boys. But I got lost along the way, got involved with the wrong things I thought would bring a better future for them, but only pushed them away." He paused, looking at his trembling hands. "Now they don't want to know about me. They don't even want to see me. And I would give anything, everything to have my children back, to be able to hug them again." As Gilbert shared more details about his life and the consequences of his choices, Travis began to see clear parallels with his own situation. Sitting in the cold concrete cell, he deeply reflected on his companion's words. Gilbert's story brought a new understanding of the suffering that his own father, Hank, must have endured for years, the pain of a father whose love was constant despite the continuous disappointments. "My father, he always tried to be there for me, despite everything I did," Travis murmured, his mind flooded with memories of all the times Hank had reached out to him only to be rejected. He recalled how, in the early days of his sentence, Hank had come to visit him, full of hope and pain, but Travis, consumed by anger and pride, had refused these visits, pushing his father even further away. "I was so angry, Gilbert. Angry at him, at the world. I didn't want to see anyone, especially my father, because it was easier to stay angry than to face the truth about myself," Travis confessed, his voice choked with emotion. Gilbert listened in silence, his expression somber and understanding. "It's a hard thing, recognizing our own mistakes, but it's the first step to making things right," he advised. Reflecting on these interactions and the reconciliation attempts he had scorned, Travis felt a wave of longing and regret wash over him. The reality that he could have shared valuable moments with his father instead of pushing him away weighed heavily on his heart. Now, missing his father more than ever, Travis faced the harsh truth that the lost time could never be recovered. The prospect of changing and, perhaps one day, regaining his father's trust became a focal point for the rest of his time in prison, fueling his hope for eventual redemption and reconciliation. After 5 long years of reflection and personal growth, the day of Travis's release finally arrived. As he walked through the prison gates, his eyes searched for familiarity in a world that seemed to have changed so much since his confinement. To his surprise and relief, the first person he saw was his father, Hank, standing outside waiting for him with an expression of hope and anxiety. The impact of his father's presence there, after all those years, was profound. Travis felt an overwhelming wave of emotions, mixed relief, gratitude, and a deep sense of regret. Slowly he approached, his steps hesitant but filled with a sincere desire to reconnect. "Dad, I didn't expect to see you here," Travis said, his voice choked with emotion and the effort to maintain composure. Hank stepped forward, his eyes brimming with tears. "I couldn't be anywhere else, Travis. No matter what happened, you're still my son," he replied, his voice firm but gentle. The two approached and shared a long, touching hug, a moment of forgiveness and renewal of bonds that both had longed for, even if subconsciously, during the tumultuous years. Travis stepped back slightly to look into his father's eyes, and with a sincerity that had been lacking in many of his earlier years, he said, "Dad, I'm sorry for everything. I was wrong, so wrong. You tried to help me, and I turned my back on you. But if you still can, I'd like to try to be the son you deserve, not for the money, not for anything material, but because I want to be by your side, learn from you, and truly live life as we should." After sharing an emotional reunion, Hank and Travis sat together in a small cafe near the prison to discuss more about the future. The air was charged with hope but also caution, especially from Hank, who still carried the scars of past disappointments. "Son, I want to believe in you, and in many ways I do, but we need to rebuild trust step by step. It's going to take time," explained Hank with calm sincerity. He paused before continuing, choosing his words carefully. "As for work, I have a position for you, but it might not be what you expect. At the orphanage we opened, there's a vacancy for a janitor. It's a humble job, but very important to keep that place a welcoming home for the children." Travis listened, absorbing the reality of what his father was offering. Despite initially being surprised, he recognized the need to start from the bottom and demonstrate through real actions that he had changed. "I understand, Dad, and I accept the janitor position. It's a chance to do something useful, to contribute positively." "I will do my best, I promise," that he replied. Hank nodded, relieved and encouraged by Travis's acceptance. "I know it's a modest start, but it's honest and necessary work. And I'll be here, Travis. I'll be here to see you grow in this new phase. And who knows, as you prove your worth, more opportunities might arise over time." With this understanding, both concluded their conversation with a renewed sense of purpose. Travis was grateful for the opportunity to start again, even in a simple position, and Hank felt cautiously optimistic about his son's future. Later that morning, after the conversation with Hank, Travis felt a wave of relief and satisfaction for having the chance to start over in such a fundamental way. The simplicity of the work, away from the glamour and pressure of his previous transgressions, brought a new peace to his spirit. At the orphanage, each day was a revelation. Travis found joy in the daily tasks. Each floor he swept, each window he cleaned, reinforced the knowledge that his actions contributed to a safe and welcoming environment for the children. He began to interact with them, initially shy but gradually with increasing enthusiasm. The children's laughter, their curiosity, and innocent joy were contagious and brought a new light to his days. "Look, Travis, come see what I drew," a little girl with golden curls called him one day, holding up a colorful drawing of a big happy house. Travis knelt beside her, admiring the work and offering a genuine smile. "It's beautiful, Alice, you put so much heart into it," he praised, and the child smiled proudly. Moments like this filled Travis's heart with pure and simple joy, a kind he had never experienced in his days of extravagance. Over time, Travis began to truly understand the value of selfless contribution, realizing that genuine happiness does not come from material possessions, but from the relationships we build and the love we share. Each day at the orphanage reinforced this lesson, healing the wounds of his past and allowing him to rebuild his life on foundations of sincerity and service. Reflecting on his journey, Travis felt grateful that his father had never given up on him, grateful for the opportunity to make a difference in the lives of the children, and above all, grateful for having found a new purpose. With a renewed heart and a light spirit, Travis was finally at peace, savoring the true happiness he now knew was built on the little things and sincere moments of human connection.